Hey, good morning again. So I think you did the talks, like I said, we're not doing VMware virtualization quite as much. It's changed over the last decade, and we keep hearing it's the year of the cloud, and Microsoft talked about how do you move to the cloud. Amazon's talking about serverless computing, and I think Brad has a nice, interesting take on it. Now, Brad works for Dell EMC. He's working on projects that are like 5 years out.
3 to 5.
Yeah, 3 to 5 years out. So his perspective can hopefully get you guys thinking about where you need to be going in the next 3 to 5 years. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Brad.
Thank you, Chris. I think everybody can hear me good. Thank you, guys. I'm glad to be out here. I'm a longtime VTUG member, so hopefully you'll enjoy this discussion. So I was asked to talk about, is public cloud the end game? And of course, coming from Dell EMC, what do you guys think the answer is? No. OK, thank you. No. Right? Well, you know what? It's not about the answer of this. It's about the journey I want to take you on to think about this. That's really what we're going to go through here. First thing that you have to do when you start asking that question of yourself and of your business is, why are you doing what you do? You all have jobs here because you're trying to make sure your company is up and running. You're trying to make sure your customer base is happy, your end users, whether they're internal or external. Realistically, we're all driving our businesses forward, right? But as we drive our businesses forward, we have to make sure that each and every one of us inside of our business is sometimes acting like an owner. And I don't mean that you're going to go take over the company and try to do everything for people, but you have to not just sit back and say, yep, I'm happy managing my ESXi cluster, and that's what I'm going to do from now on. You actually have to change your mindset a little bit. And I'm going to challenge everybody here to change your mindset with a few different aspects. First of all, be competitive. What I mean by that is, every company in this room has some type of opposition. You have a challenger. You could be the incumbent. You could be the challenger. But at the end of the day, it's up to everybody in the room to help, from an IT technology perspective, think about, how can I help us be more competitive going forward? Is it by automating something? Is it by becoming more efficient? Is it by managing the budget better? Is it by some new technology? On top of that, speaking of new technology, how do you innovate going forward? I bet you probably at least 50% of the people in this room, you are, and I hate to say it like this, stuck in an operational world. You have to keep the lights on. You have to make sure those servers are patched. You have to watch for all the security things that come out. And you just got to make sure things are going forward. While that's happening, there is always the ability to innovate. Innovation is not something you need to lock yourself in a room for 4 weeks at a time and go think about. It could be as simple as watching the trends in the industry, reading blog posts, listening to people speak. Whatever it takes to help you think about innovation, start to drive there, because at the end of the day, one of the other pieces of how you have to think is how you can transform. How can you do things differently? The whole DevOps movement, I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. That's one of those things that's not you don't do DevOps. DevOps is not a thing you buy. DevOps is not a thing that basically you can go pay a consultant, come in, and all of a sudden magically DevOps appears, right? DevOps is a way of thinking. It's a mindset. And on top of that, the transformation aspect is what DevOps is really trying to get people to think about. And the last one you have out there is, why are our businesses actually around? We all have end users. We all have end users and customers that care about what we're delivering to them, whether they're internal or external. What does that mean to each and every one of you? The only thing at the end of the day that should matter is that application or that workload is meeting the needs of your customer, because they're going to come back again, they're going to be happy with what they're using, and they're going to either pay you or they're going to keep asking for new features or whatever it's going to be. Applications drive all of us. Now here's the trick. As you're evaluating, if you think about a mind shift change, as you look about public cloud and say, so, OK, maybe I can think slightly differently. Maybe I can innovate a little more, transform, or maybe I have a little more fire in my belly and I'm going to try to be more competitive out there. There are things you cannot control. There are things out of everybody's control in this world. First of all, regulatory. You can't control regulatory. It's one of the criteria that you have to use to measure, is public cloud the end game, right? Can your application, can your data, can your workloads live in an area that is not meeting your regulatory, or is the cost too high to meet it? And if it all is satisfied, then great. Regulatory might not be a negative factor. It might just be a decision factor that you have to actually deal with. On top of that, we can't stop hackers. It's not the best word. I was going to look for another word and how to describe this, but there are external entities trying to take us down. It's that simple, right? They could be a kid sitting in some country somewhere else that's just trying to break through your firewall. It could be an entire country trying to attack you. It could be your competition trying to get into all your IP and trying to take it away from you. Whatever it is, you don't have control over them. You have the ability to try to maybe stop them, but that's a design architecture discussion. That is not a thing you can control. Wall Street. Nobody here can control Wall Street. It's impossible. It would be, if you could, it might be illegal, by the way, but if you can do it, that's great. Wall Street is a factor that drives everything in our daily lives because how much are we going to be charged by the vendor? What's our budget for this day, this year, whatever it's going to be? Wall Street are external factors that are going to impact your company and where your workloads can go, what your budget is, and how the cost base is going to be analyzed for those applications on the back end. Last one, most popular one, Mother Nature, right? The thing that we all wish we can control. You can't stop that hurricane coming up the coast. You can't stop the tornado if you're in the central part of the country. You can't stop the mudslides out in California. These are external factors that you have to take into account when you're planning out where your applications actually have to live in the end of the day. So these are 4 things that are important. But there are things that you actually have in your control that you have the ability to kind of weigh and measure against. One of those things, actually, hold on, I jumped forward. The public cloud, by the way, I don't imagine this is the end game. Because of those things I actually want to talk about for you to measure, public cloud is a piece. It is a tool in your toolbox that you have to worry about. You have a lot of these things on the screen today, whether it's SDN or SDS or storage array servers, network switches, all that stuff. Public cloud is a form of delivery. It's a deployment mechanism. It's a consumption model. It's also a set of technologies. But it is a piece of your toolbox that you have to utilize. You will be a percentage in the public cloud, whether it's today or going forward, and that could grow over time, but the criteria will actually go and drive that. So let's look at those constraints, the criteria that will actually help you drive that. Legacy systems. This is one of the more interesting ones that I know everybody here deals with because everybody here has legacy systems, right? When I say legacy, I'm going to say cloud native versus legacy, kind of the 2 buckets I'll put them in right now. With a legacy system, how old is it? Is it 20 years old, still running on the IBM thing in the back room, or is it maybe 10 years old because you just haven't upgraded the version and the vendor's not supporting it anymore and it's running in a virtual machine really happily and you just don't want to disturb it? And on top of that, the percentages right now out there in the industry, these are ranges, by the way. So you could be 100% legacy, not have any cloud native. You most likely in this world are not going to be at 0% legacy, but there are a few customers. What I'll call the companies that are born in the digital age. That's the term that these companies kind of fly into, the startups. They started out in AWS. They started out in Azure. They started out in the cloud. But you know what? They're not 100% even sometimes in the cloud. Sometimes they actually have to build their own data centers to actually pull them in. Your world, you got to figure out what percentage of your applications today are legacy, today are cloud native, and how is that ratio going to shift? There are factors around how that's actually going to move. There's actually an interesting IDC quote out there. It's from one of their studies they actually did. So IDC states by 2021, 80%, keep this in mind, 80% of Fortune 1000 companies, do some math, it's 800 companies, will conduct at least one routine task using cloud functions. And this was, if you read the actual Futurescape, the actual information behind it, it talks about how many things are moving into a cloud-native, cloud type of a deployment. That is not a large percentage of applications. The majority of applications are not running in the public cloud. That does not mean they can't. That does not mean they won't. But there is a shift that has not fully taken hold yet. AWS, Google, Microsoft, VirtuStream, IBM, we can go through a list of them. They're doing an amazingly good job at helping applications transition. But that is not where we are just now. We are still on premises for a lot of things. Control issues. Control issues is a big thing. How many people here probably have tree huggers? I'm going to bet everybody in the room has some form of a tree hugger inside the company. I love that storage array. I love those servers. I love my networking switches. They're perfect. I set them up 10 years ago, and I don't want to give those things up. Unfortunately, that's only one form of control issues. You also might have control issues like you're scared of your application living in a place that you don't control the infrastructure. Or you're scared of actually some of the other criteria around this that we're going to talk about. Control issues is something that you do have control of. It's a mentality shift. Going back to my mindset at the beginning, you have to break those barriers down, and you actually have to weigh this. If your company is not ready to move to the cloud because of control issues, you might actually fail in the end. The app might run up there, but all of a sudden you have a failure. And if there's a failure up in the cloud, what's your CIO's next thing? Well, hold on. Let's go back to what was working for the past 10 years. Please take that and move it back on premises. Go buy an HCI thing. Go buy a storage array. You're good to go. Data gravity. A lot of people might not have heard about this concept. There was a startup, unfortunately, that went under, but this has actually become more than just a startup. The concept of data gravity that started there and blew up now is the concept that says, as you move into a data economy, we are moving into a data economy. The most important thing you will own in the long term is your data. The application uses the data, right? That's how we make money in the end. Realistically, if you have a petabyte worth of data today on premises, and you run your application up across a nice WAN link, up with latency and bandwidth things around it, up in a different cloud, and they're that separate and you have issues between the two, data gravity over time will pull those applications as close to the data as possible. The bigger the amount of data that you're trying to consume, the closer you're probably going to want the application over time. That's a basic sense of where data gravity is going to take you. Measure where you're willing to store your data, because how easy is it to move 100 terabytes? How easy is it to move a petabyte? It's not. We all know that, right? And our company especially has been fighting that fight forever. It's not an easy task. You get the architecture. The architecture of your applications are a set of constraints you have to deal with. Is it a legacy application, 3-tier thing that you would have maybe bought from Microsoft back in the day that we've all been running on forever? Or are you building it with microservices, that you're API first, that you truly are self-contained containers that you can go and scale out properly? The discussion is, how is the application built? That will dictate on the back end how it's going to live inside of a cloud or on premises or even at the edge, which is part of the conversation we have to have. Architecture, and this one is a big topic. You can almost have an entire conversation. You've probably seen it multiple times on most of these topics individually. Budgets. I said Wall Street was out of your control. Budgets are not out of your control, technically, depending on where you are in the company, right? Realistically, depending on the economy, depending on your company, the people budget, what I've heard from people, is that it's not going up. You go and ask, you have 20 people on staff, you're asking for 20 more people, even 5 more people. Typically, they're like, no, you can go automate, you can do DevOps, you can do it better, just do it better, right? Automate things. Well, realistically, people budgets, if anything, would be going down over time. Overall budgets might be flat or might be rising. Interesting concept now that the new tax laws, for the most part, have passed through, right? How will that impact our overall budgets from an IT perspective? Are we going to see pass-throughs from those tax laws, from corporate all the way down into IT? You're probably going to have to fight for it. You might be able to, but that's something that will impact you. It's a criteria discussion you have to weigh out. Then you get the budgets for your different applications. I don't know if anybody here bucketizes them. I know a lot of customers do. Legacy versus cloud-native applications. Do you have one giant bucket? You probably do. But in that bucket, you have to make a decision. Do I keep those legacy things running on support, maintain, that we know are working forever? Or am I willing to go and make that shift and build the new version of it, refactor it, revector, whatever the answer is? And on top of that, that budget for refactoring is probably not gigantic. It might be growing a little bit over time. But you are probably not getting okay, here is double your budget, go take every application and go refactor it over there. That's just not happening. It's not reality for most businesses out there, right? So to summarize the first piece of the conversation, I'm grouping these 3 things. Is public cloud the end game? I don't have an answer for you. My opinion, it's a piece of the puzzle. And you have to use all these things in your toolbox to figure that out. That's why I'm saying everybody here is going to be slightly different on this. With that being said, in this world, everybody in this room wants things to be simpler. We just want there to be the big easy button. And there are different forms of deployments that have given us that big easy button. You have traditional infrastructure. All of us grew up with this. Manage the piece parts, have tons of different element managers, don't have an easy button for anything. They might be simpler to use, but you still have 7, 10 different things to manage. Then what happened? The concept of IaaS, HCI, virtualization even helped in this space, obviously. All of a sudden, you're starting to get that easy button for the lower half of the stack, and things are actually moving in a great direction with that. A lot of people here are obviously very successful around that, and that is a major shift in the market. In this world, you still got to manage the application and the data and even some of the runtime environments all by yourself, but realistically, everything under the covers, that's easy now, right? Go into a single GUI, you can manage everything from a single click of a button through a wizard. That's awesome. Platform as a service is starting to take off. It's not there yet because not everybody's applications are ready to make that shift. Platform as a service has been designed for some of those cloud-native applications. When you're ready to refactor, revector those applications, start saying, do I even care about the runtime under the covers? I literally want to do, in my world for Cloud Foundry, CF push. And once my developer developed it, the application gets deployed out. Developer has no clue what's under the covers. Doesn't understand it's in a container, it's in a VM, it's on VMware, it's on OpenStack, whatever it's on, he doesn't know. But then you get, obviously, full SaaS. And in the full SaaS world, I'll use Salesforce as an example, right? All you're doing is consuming the application, they built it, you might be modifying and tweaking and tuning it. There's this new world that came out, which is FaaS. And I don't know, obviously the AWS conversation brought up a lot of this, but these are the conversations that says, as we're moving towards cloud native, as you're moving to the DevOps mentality, you really want functions. You don't even want applications. You want to be able to workflow things out. Everything becomes a workflow, even how applications run. And FaaS is another thing to make your life simpler if you can consume it properly. Now, with all that being said, I want to take you through a few trends that will help in your decision, is public cloud the end game for you? First up, I'm going to make the assumption everybody here has some form of on-premises data centers, probably two if you're truly doing DR, which again, most people do nowadays. You're also going to have some probably percentage in form of public cloud. Right here are some of the biggest ones out there. You also have what I'm going to call edge sites. Now, this could be called remote offices, robo, whatever you guys want to use for your term. I'm going to throw it as edge because that's the IoT way of starting to think about it. Because guess what? IoT impacts everybody here, and you all know that at this point. And that means that you have robo edge sites, towers, whatever they are. You now have to worry about all the things that are beyond the edge, which is the edge, but it's like small sensors, watches, phones, where's your mobile apps running, all this stuff, right? You are all being impacted by this bigger discussion of how applications are going to be designed and deployed in the future. In this world, there are these 6 trends that we see happening in 2018. The first one is a term that my CTO, John Rose, kind of likes to use, is mega cloud. I prefer to call it multi-cloud, but the notion is nobody in this room is going all in on one vendor, one cloud. If you are, God bless you, awesome, might simplify your life, but most people want choice. A lot of people want a 2-vendor strategy for financial reasons, for DR reasons, whatever it is. All of a sudden, you have 2 ways that you have to manage your infrastructure, at least 2, if not 2, 4, 6, 8, whatever it's going to be. This is the year we believe that a lot of people are going to try taking on the notion that says, how do we simplify multi-cloud management? Is it another layer on top of it? Is it automation that we do locally through Ansible, Puppet, Chef things that can disaggregate the APIs? There's a lot of conversations in mega cloud, multi-cloud. This is something this year, if you're not thinking about it, and if you're thinking about using multiple clouds, you definitely want to start thinking about. Another trend impacting your public cloud first discussion is it's been the year of big data now, I think 6 years or whatever the time frame has been, right? I used to do end user computing, so the joke was always the year of VDI, and it's still the year of VDI. This is the year of big data again, but we believe we're moving beyond big data finally. Big data, data lakes, the notion was get all your information, structured, unstructured, whatever it is, into a consumable pool and be able to have interfaces on top of that that you can do something with. Right? EMC has been a big proponent. Dell EMC going forward is doing that. But the discussion for most customers never truly went to the next step. Now that we have the data in the data lakes, how do we simply and easily turn that into driving our business? That leap has been a very hard thing for a lot of customers. Some customers have done amazingly well at that, but not everybody has made that leap. This is the year we believe that customers are going to figure out how do we monetize our data we have in the data lakes. And is that data living up in the public cloud, on premises, at the edge? Where is that data going to live? Those are questions you have to ask going forward, because that will drive your business to be more competitive, to be able to transform and to innovate on the front end. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to steal something. I think it's from a friend that somebody reminded me about, Mike Foley, who I don't think is around today. I don't think he came out. But the security culture is something that I'm an IT guy. I don't think security. I don't think most of us in this room do, unless you're a security guy, right? And some of us are tasked to do it. But what Mike likes to say, I think you might have heard him here at the VTUG, security puts the no in innovation, right? That's his tagline. Yes, unfortunately, it's kind of sort of true, but going forward, it cannot be true. We cannot stop security. It is not a negative in your company anymore. Remove that from your head. Security is something that is a live or die moment for most organizations going forward, because at some point, something from a cybersecurity perspective will impact you. That is extremely important for every single person in this room to think about, down to the lowest levels of encryption or authentication or whatever it's going to be. So we've also had two other terms out there, artificial intelligence, IoT. I would argue with people that maybe they're marketing terms for the past few years for a lot of people in this room. They're like, yeah, artificial intelligence, we're not getting Skynet for a while, I'm not worried about it, right? Or IoT, I'm doing that already, I have remote offices, I have a mobile app, like that's IoT, isn't it? This is the year we believe businesses are truly going to turn them more from marketing into actual things that they're actually driving the business around. They are not just marketing, they are consumption models, they are development models. There are many things in this world that we have to drive for. And if you do not believe artificial intelligence is real, then you are not reading enough things out there, because it is real, it is working. And I don't even mean like IBM with Watson and those things. I mean, there are things that are coming out that would blow your mind, and now you actually think about it. You probably use them every day. Alexa, Google Home, right? All those things. They are driving these artificial intelligence mentalities going forward. The next one, which is near and dear to my heart a little more because my job of running management orchestration strategy at the company, is composing infrastructure. I sit with customers on a regular basis and I say, okay, how many of you have automated even just your VMware environment to the point that I can run a script, push a button, and it will go and auto-provision servers, load the operating system, correctly deploy the network, configure the storage, and all I did was push a button or run a script. And usually it's about maybe 1% of people that have actually done that level of automation. Composing your data center needs to be more autonomous. You need to drive towards what I'm going to term the self-driven data center. You need to move towards that data center where you're automating stuff and you're thinking, well, I do that on a regular basis and I like doing it. Do you really enjoy deploying virtual machines on a regular basis, or installing ESXi again, or updating the servers again? No, you want those things to be autonomous. You want them to be as automated as possible. Composing data centers and services, very important in 2018. It's going to actually hopefully take off for a lot of people. And the last one for the geeks in the room, and this actually really goes down to the geek level, is new media. What I mean by new media, we've had DRAM forever. We've had flash and SSDs forever. Now we have this thing in the middle called persistent memory. It says other tier. Many things are in the middle there. It's not one thing, it's multiple things. Intel, Micron, there's tons of companies working on this. The notion is, this year, finally, new media is mature. It's going to be available in a ton of different deployment models, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's going to be in servers you deploy on premises, whatever it is. But new media, persistent memory, brings an interesting paradigm for most people in this room. The example I use is today. If your Windows machine blue screens or your vSphere server purple screens, which hopefully they don't anymore, then realistically, when you reboot it, what happens? It comes back, it works, it boots up, it's kind of happy for the most part, usually. Right? If you don't have DRAM, non-persistent memory, in that server, and that server reboots on you, and it's still persistent, it remembers the state that it just rebooted in, guess what? You have the potential of coming back up as a blue screen, back up as a purple screen. It didn't fix your problem. You need persistent memory to have storage-like services on top of them, rollback, snapshots. We can go into a whole bunch of things. These are the things that this year, we see those types of permutations coming out in the new media world, and that's why we believe this year is going to be a shift for people to start to understand how you actually can consume new media, whether it's in the cloud or on premises. So with all these trends, going back to is public cloud the end game? Don't know. I'm giving you a whole bunch of things to think about, because at the end of the day, how do all these things, where's big data going to live? Is it going to live in the cloud locally, right? Is it secure enough up in the cloud? I don't like throwing that one out, because realistically, you can solve the governance security things in a lot of the cloud deployments nowadays. So these things will all impact your decision of where things are going to live. Realistically, everybody in this room has a percentages discussion you have to figure out. At the end of the day, what percentage of your data is going to live in which deployment model, and what percentage of your applications are going to then go out with that data in those deployment models. Again, I don't have an answer. You have to think about, and you have to analyze your business and figure this out yourself. It's a good exercise to actually run through. With that being said, I want to take you through two use cases, right? The two use cases are going to impact everybody here personally in this room, and it probably will impact a large percentage of corporations and companies in this room. So I'm going to throw out one obvious one, the self-driving car. Everybody hears about this. We're all loving it, right? When's Tesla going to give me the full auto button? I have no steering wheel anymore, right? Well, realistically, how many industries will be impacted when we actually do have self-driving cars? It's not one. It's not automotive. It's automotive. It's insurance. It's legal. It's security, emergency services, energy, technology vendors, government, telco, even meteorology. Why wouldn't we be able to track weather in real time with all the sensors on the road all of a sudden that are all these intelligent cars, and all of a sudden the weathermen basically have the most perfect reports they'll be able to give you, like, wow, that tornado is actually going through this area at exactly this time. And there are things that we're going to be able to have just by the sheer number of cars on the road that are going to impact so many industries people aren't even fully thinking about it yet. Now, with that being said, let's walk through how a self-driving car kind of deployment scenario might tie into public cloud and application deployments. So we all have these really cool cars someday soon that we're all going to hopefully own, right? On top of that, there's another technology coming out, which is 5G. If you are not familiar with 5G yet, Google it. 5G is obviously the replacement for 4G. The difference is 5G is going to be able to get up to, hopefully, 10 gig. Real-time, 10 gig wireless signals out to everything, and the range is going to be wider also for what they can do. And the cost is supposedly going to be cheaper, to the point that over time, I'll bet money 5G could replace a lot of internal wireless connections that a lot of people are doing. Why wouldn't the telco, if they had the right cost model, actually be able to help you drive that? Now, realistically, these cars actually have a two-way signal. They're going to receive data from whatever's on the other end, and they're going to talk up through 5G also. You're going to have your own personal data center probably still that day, because God bless you if you, again, move everything to public cloud, good for you, but I just don't think it's a reality. You're going to have your back-end financial systems, whatever they are, that are running in your data center still, that legacy, that you're not going to feel comfortable maybe putting up there. But you are going to have a lot of things up in the public cloud. Now, realistically, they're all going to connect through standard WANs that we're all used to. What 5G is enabling, though, is 5G is actually enabling a lot more of these remote edge sites, because the sheer bandwidth discussion that I'm talking about, you're going to be able to have these multi-terabit links coming out of these multi-gigabit links to all these tens of thousands of devices. The edge sites become very powerful. There could be 10,000 cars connecting to a tower. All of a sudden, why wouldn't I want to be able to do something at that edge site with that much intelligence, that much data, raw data coming into some of those sites? So realistically, what are the types of applications that you might think about deploying in a self-driving car world? First one up is in the car. You need to have the real-time autonomous stuff. This is the decision maker that's a life or death thing. If my application is deciding if I need to stop now, if I don't want to hit that car, if I need to swerve out of the way, which is where self-driving cars are going, do you have the time to wait for that data to be sent up to the cloud, churn, come back down, and by that point, bam, done, dead? There are applications, a lot of them, that we're going to be able to run locally inside of our cars. Right off the bat, if I'm going to say, is public cloud the end game? Of course not, because you've got apps that are going to be running all over the place. Public cloud is a piece of it in this scenario. You're going to have apps at the towers, right? That's what I was starting to talk about. If you have enough connectivity, enough data coming back to those towers, you have those real-time decisions that you have to make inside the car, but maybe there's a near real-time thing that you want to be able to do, right? Maybe the weather patterns for redirections that isn't so real-time, traffic types of decisions that are localized to counties or towns or cities. Realistically, that data might not have to go all the way back up to the public cloud. It could live within that town or wherever it is with a locality that's not within microseconds, it's within minutes or whatever it's going to be. You're going to see those applications pushed out to robo-sites or edge sites, depending on what you call them. You're going to then have these two types of applications. You'll have your back-end applications running in your data center. Again, legacy apps that you might not have gotten rid of forever, right? But the cloud right now is great for all those customer-facing mobile apps. The app that ties into your car, that gives you that really funky interface that you can go and start it up from your phone, why wouldn't that be in the cloud? It doesn't make sense to go start building some of those things on premises. So you have a lot of decisions that you have to start putting around in a self-driving car world that, again, a lot of companies will be impacted by. Some stats on this one, just to kind of put it out there. In 2016, I don't know if people know these, there were 246 million cars registered in the US. Now, of course, it's not everyone driving at the exact same time, but if it's a percentage, that's a very large number of things on the road. Of that percentage, 71,000 were Teslas that were the first one that was trying to get to autonomous, right, self-driving cars. But in 2017, and this was in October stats, I don't have the final stats yet, they actually sold greater than 170,000 Teslas out there. And they're the ones that are pushing other manufacturers to get there. Right now, between Audi, GM, BMW, Mercedes, everybody, they are really pushing for self-driving because they are seeing Tesla as the enemy, and they are going hard after Tesla at this point. So this world is not slowing down. If anything, it is speeding up, and we have to be ready for how it impacts each of your companies out there. I want to take you through another type of discussion. This one's a little bit more interesting sometimes to me because self-driving is sometimes overdone. Biomedicine. Again, impacts everybody. Almost impacts you more than the self-driving car because we might not all afford the self-driving car in the future depending on how expensive they get at first. Industries that can be, and there's a lot more than this, that could be impacted by this. Healthcare, insurance, legal, emergency services, consumer goods, tech vendors, pharmaceutical, biotech. I'll explain what I mean by biomedicine as I go through the example. First thing, we have Joe Patriot fan. I had to throw something Patriots in here. Joe Patriot sitting at home. He was watching the game, really happy guy, right? Well, realistically, there's some doctors and surgeons and nurses that are tied back to hospitals, but you probably have your own data centers. And guess what? Those doctors roam around to doctors' offices because they're usually systems. They're not a single hospital they live out of. And there is a public cloud somewhere that probably they're running some things in. I know coming from some of the medical work I've done, EHR, EMR, a lot of them are hosted up in clouds at this point with remote connectivity. So they're all connecting down to the hospitals, and they're all talking through the clouds at this point. Realistically, in this world, what are the types of apps that are going to run there? You have diagnostics, EMR, prescription things that run at the hospitals. You got patient, provider, end user things that are going to run up in the cloud. And there's different variations of this, but in the healthcare world, that's what's going to happen. What gets interesting is we all have a phone on us right now, or the majority hopefully have phones on you, right? We all probably have looked at a Fitbit or Jawbone when they're around or whatever the things are, and you have a health monitor, right? Well, Joe Patriot, he actually has a health monitor on him. His doctors, luckily, they're monitoring what's going on because he might have had a few issues he came in for, and they really want to find out his stats on a regular basis. Really funny side note, and I'm going to go away from the Patriots to the Vikings-Saints game, right? I don't know how many people saw that game, but obviously at the end of the game, mind-blowing, just everybody in uproar in the stadium. If you didn't know, Vikings won that game, right? At the end of the game, there was an article that came out that said, supposedly Google and a bunch of other companies actually sent out alerts to everybody in the stadium telling them they were having heart attacks. Because literally, they were sitting in resting heart mode for like 3 or 4 hours, like, yep, okay, we're going to lose the game or whatever. Literally, last second, everybody's heart rate spiked so high, and they were so dormant for so long that everybody's phones and Fitbits and said, go to the hospital now, you're having a heart attack. I'm not joking, by the way, it was on the news. And I was like, that's crazy. Now imagine doctors getting those signals in real time, by the way. So we'd have to tie this into social media and make sure the football game didn't cause that, and what's your location. And there's a lot of interesting things that will have to come to do validation against that, or else you will have doctors losing their minds in the future thinking that 180,000 people just had a heart attack. Like, it's going to be really interesting how this actually works out. But realistically, there's going to be basic health monitoring in those heart monitors or health monitors they have. Here's another invention. This is real. I'm not making this up. You can Google this. I think a lot of people probably know what an endoscopy is. It's where they go in top down through the mouth and they try to figure out if you have any issues, right? Well, they actually now have a pill camera. Pill camera literally is a pill. You can swallow the pill camera. The pill camera then is able to give back images and sensor data of everything inside of you, and it kind of comes out the other end at some point, right? Well, near future, really near future, why isn't that pill monitor talking to the health monitor that's actually sending the data in real time back to the doctor who's on the phone with you while it's traversing through your system, and you're getting a diagnosis in real time, a full endoscopy without actually having to go to the hospital? Really interesting with that one. These are the things that we have to worry about because now you have applications running inside your body that are dependent on applications that are running in the public cloud or on premises that doctors are dependent on to help save your life. Another piece of the example, defibrillators. This one's a real one, by the way. You get a defibrillator put in your heart, right? Old Joe Patriot, unfortunately, doesn't have the greatest heart. It's going to help him. Well, realistically, why isn't it sending stats up through Wi-Fi back to the doctors. They actually can do some of that today. It's pretty cool. Unfortunately, I just heard that they're also hackable today, which is a totally different discussion. And they're going to be hackable in the future, which is even worse. But realistically, if the doctor sees those stats and watches all of a sudden that he is at the Patriots game, and like the Pats do, of course, it's fourth quarter, and we're behind by 20 points, and we know we're probably going to win the game, but he's, of course, having a heart attack, basically, watching the game. Why isn't the doctor able to go and tweak and tune his defibrillator to make sure he's actually not going to have a heart attack when they actually do win the game in the end? So the doctor's going to go send data back down. The applications in this world are very interesting. They're going to run at the edge, in your house, inside your body. What runs in the public cloud? What runs on premises? There's a lot of questions that you guys are going to have to answer in these types of scenarios. So is public cloud the end game? Not mine to answer for you. My answer personally is no, but that's a personal opinion. For you guys, you're going to have to figure that out on your own. Now, you notice I did no Dell EMC slides in this whole thing. Come on, you got to give me credit on that. I got to throw one out there. But we are, from a Dell EMC perspective, and I'm in the CTO office, so I get to talk big, fun pictures. We are on a transformation journey. This is, from a Dell EMC perspective, this is what we are doing with customers. We are talking to you about all of the digital transformation, the IT transformation, the workforce, the security. These are aspects that if you guys are curious about how we can help you, obviously reach out to us. We'll be able to do that. But just know that we're there to help you move forward because, to me, public cloud is not the end game, but Joe Patriot had better live on to see the next Super Bowl. So thank you guys very much.